3. Welcome to the Cross Commission podcast. I'm Ryan. That's Jake and Ryan, not Jake and Steve. Yeah, it's been a long day.
Alive.
I thought I said Jake and Safe, and I'm Ryan, but this is not to be confused with Live from the Kill House from No Laying Up. Yes, Bethpage Black is on my bike riding course, one of my bike riding routes. Only 10 minutes away from Bethpage Black, but we're not talking about the Ryder Cup or NBC's shambolic coverage, sorry. Or Team USA's shambolic performance, for that matter.
What was so bad? Sorry, I mean, I know you kind of touched on it, but you didn't like...
About the TV coverage?
Yeah.
There's just no...
I'll let Jake go.
There's no way you can actually watch it as, like, a sporting event. They go to commercials within, like, 5 minutes of each other. So, and there's so many... I had it on, like, on my phone on the way to work. And literally within, like, the first 30 minutes, there's, like, a corporate interview. I mean, like, there's just, in general, there's just no flow to the broadcast. It's so choppy. They'll come, they'll have a 5-minute window of coverage. And in that 5 minutes, there's, like, 2 minutes where they're not actually showing anything. They're just, like, doing, like, they're talking or they're doing some montage or whatever. And they go to commercial. In general, I think if you actually add it up, there's probably like 20 minutes of commercials in an hour segment, which is a ridiculous amount of commercials for a sporting event. Like,
that makes NASCAR look like F1.
And they do the whole playing through, which is just dumb because you can't actually watch it. I'd rather you just go to commercial and then show me what happens when you come back. Also, they're never live with anything. They're always on like a 2-minute delay with literally everything, which is like, how are you... It's bad. It's really bad.
If we have time later in the show, we got to have Jake and I's conversation about NFL television and just the overall end of quality.
It's all so
post-quality
bad.
world of sports.
Peak sports. We should just trademark it now.
It's all so bad, man. It kills me.
I'll tell you, the no cable thing is absolutely liberating. It's just like that Plato's Cave thing. You know, it's just like, oh, wait, these are just shadows. I can walk out the cave.
It's just, oh, God, it's the worst.
Yeah, if we did this like 2 weeks earlier, we could have gone on a 30-minute rant about YouTube, the YouTube NFL game.
Oh, my God. That was the time of the apocalypse. Yeah.
That was grotesque. It was
an affront against Scott, like it was just absolutely. No, I remember that. No, it was great.
I literally watched. I went on I clicked on it, and there's Mr. Beast. I'm just like, what is this? Like, what is this? I was convinced I had the wrong channel. I'm like, all right, there's you know, it's like there's
this is like the fan feed, cast.
I'm gonna find
with all the
option.
influencers.
I'm gonna find another option. I click off, and the first thing up there is watch with speed. I don't want to watch with speed. I just want to watch the game. I was talking about it with work, and one guy was like, he was, like, yeah, but this is like, this is what they do for some people. They see Mr. Beast on there, and they tune in. I'm like, yeah, but I don't have to like it.
Yeah.
Like, I acknowledge it. I just don't respect it or like it. Any of it. I hate it all. In fact.
Yeah,
constantly throwing to another influencer. Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's the worst.
We got Netflix getting the opening game and opening game only to Major League Baseball next year because that contract hasn't been carved up enough between enough people.
Oh,
It's just terrible.
I've seen a lot of the YouTube clips about the NBA schedule, and it was like kind of funny, like losing cable, but so many games are on Peacock. I was like, I may end up watching more NBA games.
I mean, the NBA schedule is going forward is going to be pretty smart because you got a lot on Prime. I mean, Peacock we'll see, but like having a lot of games on Prime smart. But then once the playoffs start, once the playoffs start is going to be the real whiplash when You put on ESPN and you got 2 hockey games on, but then basketball's exclusively on Prime or Peacock that night. That's going to be the real whiplash.
It's just all.
This will be the first year Prime does basketball, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if they'll do a Prime Vision, like almost like a 2K looking. You could have the regular broadcast. I love that. I do love Prime's the Prime Vision for the NFL games. That is
pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they could do a little less graphics with the Prime Vision, but it's still pretty cool to see all the plays develop on that. And I don't have any issue with Prime because they do a good job with the NFL. They did a great job with NASCAR. They do a good job with the NHL in Canada too. So I'm sure their NBA coverage will be good. It's the NBC, the one that I'm worried about, because it's like, yes, I feel like having someone other than ABC and ESPN at the helm will be good. The bad news is how much are they going to be milking on the nostalgia and Rambo Rock and talking about the 90s and Jordan and Kobe the whole time, and how much will it actually be good, especially because as we let off the show, NBC sports quality has...
It all sucks.
The guys they signed I kind of like them a little more than the TNT guys. I mean, TNT guys are fine, but it's been for so long. It's the lineup at NBC. I mean, getting Michael, which is great. I still don't know what he's going to do. Is it going to be just like a taped interview? I think
he'll do like 10 games in the studio or something, and he'll probably be relatively anodyne. I don't know, or maybe he's Michael. He'll probably it'll be great at first, then he'll just be like, all right,
we're done.
I've heard it. So no, he'll just be like, yeah, I've heard it now. So all right, let's talk some lacrosse.
Let's talk some lax. So we finally have a schedule, or maybe we already have a schedule, depending on how you look. I guess we could say we already have a schedule, kind of early in this day and age. Say for your Johns Hopkins Blue Jays drop the schedule, and in an affront to God, the regular season starts on January 31st.
The Greeks, they cool with it. I am excited for that Georgetown game the week after, so I will put my money where my mouth is. Hey, that's probably going to be a very cold game. When is the Super Bowl? I guess that would be before the Super Bowl year?
Super Bowl this year
Super Bowl's the week after. Super Bowl's the week after.
Super Bowl's the Georgetown game? The Georgetown game is next, so yeah. Yeah, I do. I always say that there is a gap in sports, and lacrosse can capture. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of valid arguments about starting the season later, which maybe we can.
The only people watching a Johns Hopkins Robert Morris lacrosse game on January 31st are
in this broadcast.
Maybe we're 3 of the 100 probably or something. I don't know how many people are how many people post on the FanLax Hopkins board? Take that, add it maybe by 100. There you go.
Well, you remember the Navy game, which was bitter cold, on Tuesday, early February, maybe late January, but the numbers were great. I think it was 2,500 or something on the broadcast. But it's the quality of games. There's a lot of valid arguments about starting the season a little bit later. But like I said, I always like games on, and once football's done, there's that lull. I mean, I love basketball and hockey, really cool as well, but really more of a playoff casual fan for both of those leagues, or the National Minor League. But hockey obviously it's league, but I don't watch as much that. But if they ever do move it, like I said, it's going to be interesting to see that develop, just because I think everyone's banking on the early summer and recruiting and a lot of that. I don't know how many people are going to wish to move things around.
Hopkins will have played 6 games by February 28th. That's nuts. That's they will have half their season done by the end of February,
which is essentially the February 28th. March 1st was tradition, at least when I was in school, first game, Princeton. So pretty much half the schedule before a game in 2005 would have, a season 2005 would have started. So.
That's nuts.
I mean, if you ask me, the month of January, the only athletic contest between Baltimore and the greater Pittsburgh area should be the Ravens and Steelers playing a 13-10 unwatchable classic in the AFC wildcard or divisional. not Johns Hopkins, Robert Morris lacrosse. Sorry if this offends anyone.
The problem with this is that all the Southern schools came in, Richmond and High Point and so on and so forth, and they started playing their games in February because they could. The weather was good. It was 50, 60
it's
degrees.
Jacksonville, Florida. It's 80 out.
And then all the other coaches decided, why don't we do that too? And we have what we have. It doesn't make sense for everybody else. In addition to that, they also just all gave up on midweek games, which is a significant part of this. Brian Poswell, can someone mandate coaches to play midweek conference games? I think this is actually fascinating, but I have a take that at first I was against this when the ACC used to play their conference games in kind of like a wild different direction. Like Virginia and Syracuse the first couple of years was still the end of February as a conference game. At first I didn't like that, but now I'm coming around to it and I'm like, if you're Hopkins and you play 2 Big Ten games in April. One is Penn State and one is Maryland. Obviously the Maryland game's in its traditional spot still. Would you not rather play Navy on April 4th than Penn State? Or would you not rather play, I don't know, Syracuse, if you could, on April 4th?
Loyola,
that's a great, yeah, like Towson even. I just think this is the first time in, I think, 10 years that Hopkins Navy is on a Saturday at Homewood. It's a long time. So it should do a good number, but it's middle of March. You never know. It could be a great day and you get a good crowd, or it could be freaking 30 degrees. I just think if you were Hopkins and you could play 2 Big Ten games in early March instead and swap in 2 non-con games in April, I feel like that's how many Big Ten games for Hopkins really drive the juice as far as attendance. It's Maryland pretty much. Like no one at Hopkins is getting out of their seat for Ohio State at home. Safe might, but
safe won't.
Everybody else is, I think. So I'm for the Big Ten. I also think as just like from a Big Ten perspective, I don't think it really does them any favors the way the conference slate sets up. They just beat each other in a phone booth for 5 weeks. And
no midweek non-con games like all the other conferences.
Like they just mix
it up a little.
They always say it's a second season, and it is. I just don't know if that's a good thing. Our buddy, I was DMing with our buddy Mark, and who's obviously a Hopkins fan, and he kind of put it like this: if everybody started the season on February, like the 3rd week of February, so kind of where the Ivy starts it, that would be February. This year it'd be February 21st. Yeah, 3rd week, basically where the Ivy starts. Hopkins could play Georgetown that weekend, start the season. They could play a midweek game with Robert Morris in that February. North Carolina on the road the next week, the last week of February. And then what if they did this, if we decided to like move Big Ten games around? They could play Michigan and Ohio State the first 2 weeks of March.
Well,
then they could go ahead.
Please. No, I don't want to interrupt you.
They could play Syracuse at home March 21st, which is about 2 weeks later than it normally is.
Yeah, it's usually around St. Patty's Day, so
another Big Ten game against Rutgers the week after that, and then April they could play Penn State, and basically they would have Big Ten play all finished except for Maryland by the first week of April. And then you could do Virginia April 11th, Navy April 18th, and you could do Towson and Loyola 2 May games to end the year at home. And so this is if you push the season back 2 weeks. I would honestly, if I could, maybe get it in March 1st. But I could see if everybody started where the Ivy did. And you could get, this was my whole thing. I think everybody should be playing games in May. I think it's terrible that we build the season around May and then we have teams whose season is up. Hopkins' season was over in April last year. Yale's season was over in April last year. I hate that we have, in March Madness, everybody plays in March. Not everybody goes far, but I don't know. I just really, it's kind of a bummer. I mean, listen, there's obvious.
Yeah, and just
What-
quickly to interrupt
go
you,
ahead.
just with that point, because Memorial Day is the 25th. Vast majority of team seasons are going to be done April 30th or earlier this year.
Yep.
One thing
I mean,
for
So
the
a lot of the conference semifinals will be Thursday, the 30th of April.
Or the first week of May.
one thing for the big that maybe could actually get through, but I think also maybe get some resistance. It's removing the everybody gets in the pool rule, and then that
I
gives you
would-
that free week, and
I
then,
would do
then
that.
you can either schedule a non-con game on a weekend for like a traditional rival that.
But
free,
to be fair, not to stop, but they did that. They had that before, and no one ever scheduled it because obviously, you want to play. You need a buy in there somewhere.
No, I know. I'm saying like the coaches may just take that and instead of just take the week off. But I was saying if you are a top finisher in the big, you kind of have had a negative experience with that bye week. So like maybe some of them will be like, oh yeah, maybe this actually would be a better idea. If to like skip that. But yeah, I think like you're right. Like they may just be like, hey, let's just have a week off before we play Penn State or something. But at least that would give some flexibility without because I think they do love everybody playing conference games in April as much as possible, or late March. But removing that requirement, or that 6 teams getting into Big Ten tournament, you give that flexibility without really disrupting what they're trying to do in late March, April.
I would get rid of it personally, but I would also. I think the problem the Big Ten has is how many other teams could you get to do this? I would say I think it would behoove the Big Ten and the ACC to come to some sort of actual scheduling agreement.
Oh yeah, and I know big ACC challenge. Yeah,
not even that. Like that could be cool, but actually work together as conferences on scheduling these games, so that and get the coaches together and be like, all right, let's move some conference games around so that we can get some. Imagine Notre Dame and Ohio State playing each other instead of the first week of March, the first week of April. That could work. Maryland and Virginia play each other in April instead of Syracuse and Hopkins. Like, I think if you could find a way to actually work, maybe, or Penn State's going to play a big ACC team apparently this year. Maybe they get somebody in there. If you actually did it as like a challenge type deal, you could get like 3 games in like a early April week. I think that'd be good. I think these teams all have natural rivalries with each other. Virginia has Maryland and Hopkins. Syracuse has Hopkins. Hopkins has them with like 3/4, 5/5 of the ACC. Notre Dame has Ohio State. I just think if you could these teams could put their brains together. I don't know. I think that you could get some more people on campus, which I think if we're talking about grow the game, maybe will be worth it a little bit more than just, whatever's best in the tournament.
At least Cuse Hopkins is in its traditional spot.
That may expose some antitrust violation, suits, but I'm just wondering. The SoCon,
they do it in college football.
Yeah, it's just a joke. Yeah, if I'm thinking of businesses, but hey, let's work together.
The Ivy does it with their schools getting some non-con games in April, so shouldn't.
No, it's totally possible. It's totally possible. It's just now listen. The Big Ten also has the problem of they have an even number of teams. This also becomes the issue. If you have an odd number of teams, there's always someone free to play a non-con. There's always one week you have where you can play a non-con game. The ACC has an odd number of teams, and the Ivy has an odd number of teams. The Big Ten has 6, so they're always playing conference games. I don't know. This is just listen. It's not the first January game. Denver played a January game a couple years ago. It's this year. It happens because there's 5 weeks in January. So the first weekend of February is February 7th, as opposed to like February 4th or whatever it might be. It's basically the same date as it's been in the past, but I don't know. January 31st just kind of just rubs me the wrong way. But you could see it, the creep, at Hopkins going back
it's 2005. That's the last March start. After that, they started playing Albany in late February. I don't know if it's TV or whatever, but like that seems to be the time period where like the expansion into February really like kicked into gear. Then it started like 2 games in February and stuff like that. Depending on the schedule, then it started, where we are now. Like when you think about it, it's like really only 20 years. And we were like totally like took over. The game started like a month earlier than it was 2005 for pretty much every program.
It was the Southern schools that part and the conferences. The conference
Conference. Yeah.
You good, dog?
Yes, no, I got a mosquito flying around me here.
All right, we're 20 minutes in. If you're here, here's Brian says, 05 UMBC Hopkins game was the coldest game I attended. And that was the first week of March. Oh, yeah. March in 2005.
I mean, yeah, to be fair, yeah, to be fair, the game that I froze my butt off the most was Hofstra Princeton 2007. That was the day after St. Patrick's Day. So,
oh man, Hofstra and Princeton played for a while, and I swear every time they played, it was just frigid. Every game they played, I swear, was just a total.
I think the high that day was might have gotten to 10. Not exaggerating.
That's terrible. Safe, any other thoughts on the Hopkins schedule?
No, I like it. I mean, I'm actually cool with less, midweek games. I know we're going to play Towson right after the Georgetown game, so it'll be a little bit tight, just especially given the rivalry and Towson's resurgent the last couple of years. But I like Virginia not being a midweek game. Or maybe you can beat Carolina because it's going to be at UNC. Love the home schedule. I'll see you on the 18th, Jake.
Indeed.
We may have to grab tickets early given it's homecoming, but that should be really fun. I mean, like being probably going to try to get that Rutgers game versus Hopkins up here in Jersey. So looking forward to Rutgers' schedule because I think maybe they have a pretty nice slate in Princeton as well. So always excited for the local teams for me. But yeah, that Georgetown game is going to be great. My boy. Had a great time. 2024, we're probably going to link up again. And not many surprises like you guys. I'm happy to see Navy, get a weekend slot. One of the tougher games. Never like playing the midshipmen, but much prefer playing them, with a week rest instead of like midweek that Hop has. And yeah, everything, just being first. So looking forward for the other teams. But yeah, just kind of really gets into the gear. Yeah, the season's coming in a few months.
And it'll be a slow drag till everyone rolls out their calendars the week before Christmas.
When's Notre Dame dropping down?
Maryland might drop. Maryland
for those 3 programs. When do they actually release? So before Martin Luther King or after? I guess late.
Maryland might drop their schedule the week that Hopkins plays their first game.
I could definitely see that.
Like the last 2 years it's been like Martin Luther King, legitimately. It's been
Syracuse is like, get your season tickets now. It's like, what's the calendar? How many games are you getting out of it?
It is really
everyone's joined the trend.
Maryland's just doing like those influencer meetups and just be like, Friday afternoon, just like, all right, we're playing Richmond here at 1:00. Come get your tickets. And just
come next week. Come next week for the next opponent.
Yeah, exactly. Their Twitter account just releases it. Like, all right, Saturday we're playing, blank. But
it's up to you to it's up to you to reverse engineer the schedule. You have to do some homework.
Maryland's schedule last year dropped on January 16th.
Oh, I love it.
That's 3 weeks before the season.
This is great.
But the best part is traditionally the Terps and the Orange take forever to release it. We always had the joke is whoever's the last one in the office before the office is closed for Christmas hit the post button. But last year everyone was doing it. I guess everything was hung up on that Cornell-Syracuse game that like kind of cascaded to everybody. But yeah, last year everyone like took forever.
Well, with Notre Dame. When did they have their steps?
Notre Dame and Maryland are getting just, it's kind of ridiculous because everyone literally knows your schedule because everybody else has already released the schedule. You might as well just drop it. It gets a little preposterous.
Yeah, the Irish did drop it on January 31st. So I hope they do it again. But I hope both Maryland and them do it. Like
That's insane.
10 minutes before Hopkins plays, Robert Morris, they just put out a tweet.
That's nuts. All right, in the spirit of the pod that we're going to get to, let's talk some recruiting. Has North Carolina accumulated the greatest recruiting class of all time?
6 5-stars and 5 4-stars.
They have
the Belichick effect.
Glad it's working for somebody. They have six of the top 20 recruits in the country.
We said it, soft power. It's gonna increase.
That's pretty wild.
Hey,
it's a pretty astounding class. Now, as we
Joe Brecci going down, God's place.
That's the other question. Is he still on campus when
they're not going down? But holding his ground for sure.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
I have a quick question on IL's rankings methodology because they have a points rank, but then they completely ignore it. Like Maryland is at 11 in points, but they're 9 for the sake of putting them ahead of Georgetown. They put Syracuse at 11 for the sake of, I guess, jumping Penn. Ditto for Virginia and Michigan. Virginia and Michigan would have been 20th and 16th on points, but they're both ahead of Penn, who's at 10. Is something wonky going on with those?
You have to look it up on their website. They have like an explanation of how they put the formula together. I think that the rest is just ordered by like stars, is I think how they do it. So like the ranking on the original, the points rank, I believe, is the actual ranking they use. What the exact like inputs are, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that's how they do it.
Because like Georgetown has 2 more 4-stars than Maryland, and they're behind Maryland, despite having more points as well. I don't know.
And it's also
major conference booster multiplier.
No, it's just like there's 2 different like rankings that they have.
Okay, but continuing onward. Yeah, so UNC, preposterous hogging of 5 stars.
In general, a preposterous hogging of 5 stars by 3 teams.
3 teams, yeah. There's a lot. There's only 8 schools that have gotten a 5-star recruit this cycle, and 15 of them are by either UNC, Notre Dame, or Princeton.
That's 15 to 21. And in general, this is. I think there's a couple of stories, I think, with this year's class at this point. Carolina's the big story. It's a ridiculous class. Obviously, Carolina's had great classes before. They've not always necessarily panned out with big-time college careers, but this is a bit different. The second story I would say is there is one school outside the ACC that continues to put up, again, at least on paper, truly elite classes, and it's Princeton. There's no one else outside. The number 1 recruiting class for basically 10 years now has been a race to the top between the ACC schools. And the only team that has been able to break through that kind of silo is Princeton in the last couple of years. And I think it continues to be impressive in a world now where, as we're going to talk about, increased scholarships that are offered, rev share opportunities, that Princeton is able to compete to this degree. Now, obviously, listen, they're an Ivy League school, so they're going to have a market of players that want to go there. But nonetheless, I think it's pretty astounding what they continue to do. Because again, the top recruiting classes are held by the ACC schools pretty much for the past 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. And then I think the other one is two schools who both missed the NCAA tournament last year, putting up rather differing, like really kind of polar opposite classes. Johns Hopkins missed the NCAA tournament a year ago, but has put on paper their best class probably since Dave Petramala was the coach. Their first 5-star recruit in a couple years, and overall they have 6 top 70 recruits. So Hopkins being able to kind of play up a weight class a little bit in recruiting compared to what they've been doing in the past. And the other on the flip side is Virginia, which I tweeted this stat out. Adam sent it to us. Whatever you want to make of this stuff, and I always make this mention. The coaches have much more of a role in this process than it kind of seems. Like IL or Ty Zanders or whoever's doing this, they're not doing it like without. They talk to the coaches a bunch, and it's not. Notre Dame gets a bunch of these guys, and Notre Dame wins championships. Like, Duke got a bunch of these guys, and Duke won championships. But nonetheless, it's the first time in 20 years Virginia hasn't got a 5-star recruit. For now, Virginia's been very good under Lars Tiffany about pulling guys like late in the class and kind of flipping them. So you can't rule that out. Virginia has come off a couple big recruiting classes. They got the number one incoming recruit this year in Brenda Millen, and they had a really good class for 2026. But it is rather eye-opening a little bit when you consider the success that they've had under Lars and previously Starja. And it's just, again, 2 very different classes from 2 teams who are coming off missed NCAA tournaments. So I think those are the main stories that for this year's cycle.
Yeah, I think with Virginia, I know, the first no 5 stars, but I mean, you're looking up and down because of all those schools hogging the 5 stars. Like even Maryland didn't get a 5-star in this recruiting class. I don't think that's in so much the issue for Virginia as much as it is the depth of the recruiting class, because Maryland's getting other areas filled.
Maryland
other
doesn't.
Teams around Virginia,
Maryland doesn't get 5 stars at the rate Virginia does, though.
Yeah.
So
and the other, I think the more concerning thing is, the depth of the recruiting class versus, the lack of 5 stars. The other thing, combined with the vibes of how last season ended for Virginia, is kind of the cause for pause.
Yeah, it's a bit of like being judged by your own standard, but I guess the thing is, like, Maryland does not recruit at a high school as well as the ACC schools. That's been the case for a long time now. Virginia does. I mean, Virginia's been in the mix for the number 1 class. So Virginia not having that is more surprising than Maryland doing it. We've talked about this. Maryland doesn't play in the same financial pool that the ACC schools do. The money and the scholarships that are put up by Notre Dame and Duke and Carolina, presumably as well, which is a little bit interesting just because as far as the rev share went, Carolina was not offering any to men's lacrosse, or lacrosse period for that matter. But it seems like they potentially are finding a way to get the, cash flow in other areas. So that's why for Virginia,
Bill Belichick's bank account.
It's a bit more surprising for Virginia. It doesn't necessarily mean anything right now, but it's just a little eye-opening.
All right, so we got a little exercise that I'll admit I have done very little homework on compared to what Jake has done homework on. So, Jake, if you want to take it away of what our theme for this episode is.
All right, we're going back to the draft. We are throwing it back to the high school class of 2013. This is the famed Matt Rambo, Jordan Evans recruiting class. And what we are going to do is we are going to re-rank that class based off of their college careers. So this is not an exercise designed to be, like look at how anybody got it wrong. It's more of, it's, I think, fun to look back at with over 10 years now of hindsight, and how did it turn out? And if you were to rank it today, if you got to knowing their college careers, if you got to rank that class and you got to say first pick, I want that guy for my program, who would you take? Because there's some big heavy hitters in this class. There's Matt Rambo, there's Zach Currier, there's Connor Cannizzaro, there's Zach Miller, a whole host of famed names that I think make it really, really fascinating. I think it's fascinating to look back on because the Rambo Evans recruiting class is kind of the, I would say, or the Rambo Evans debate, I should say. I think it's probably the most famous recruiting debate that there ever kind of was in college lacrosse. I think it got a lot of attention and passion kind of from lacrosse fans in a way that you don't necessarily get. I think there's a couple reasons for that. I think that lacrosse was probably a little bit bigger in 2013 maybe than it is now, or at least the online attention. I think maybe lacrosse was a little bit bigger at that time period, or at least the online attention around it was probably a little bit bigger. I think in general, Matt Rambo was a really big name out of high school. Probably up there with O'Neal was probably bigger, but aside from O'Neal, he was one of the bigger ones to ever come out. Jordan Evans was the number one recruit that went to Syracuse and wore the 22, so that was a big thing. So I just think there's a lot of attention around that class that makes it kind of interesting. And again, I think there's a lot of big names in this class. It's fun to kind of see, if you could do it again, how would we do it today? Not because again, it doesn't that anybody got it wrong. If you go back and look, the Rambo Evans thing obviously is the most thing that got the most attention. But the top 10 is full of elite players that all wound up having tremendous college careers. Rambo, Currier, Connor Cannizzaro, Zed Williams, Zach Miller, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's a kind of fun look back through time, and because these were all big names, I think, when we started doing the podcast, and now it's kind of fascinating to think that these guys are sort of either retired, some of them, or kind of on the way out, probably. Matt Rambo's like 30 now. He didn't really have a great year in the PLO. He's probably on the back end of his career. So I think that's a fun exercise. How we're going to do it, we're going to have 25 picks. And we'll do orders. Ryan, find us something that can decide who gets the first pick for us.
Okay, let's get our wheel tool.
So 25 picks. One of us will get the first pick, get to draft one player, and then we'll continue on until we get to 25, and that'll do it. And we'll kind of see how, with the benefit of hindsight, how similar was it to what happened in 2013-14, and then maybe who was the bigger fallers, who were the guys who wound up having much better careers than we anticipated.
All right, are we all set?
Yep.
The first pick will go to Jake.
All right.
And we'll just do it for the second pick. This lands on Jake again. We're going to...
Take me off the board. Take me off the board.
I know, yeah, I'm going to take you off the board. Usually with these things, it automatically does when I do it at school. So we'll just see who gets the second pick. Looks like it'll be me. Yeah. So... All right, so Jake, you'll go first with your first pick.
All right. I'll go. So,
by the way, do we have a spreadsheet that we could just have up while we're going through this?
If you want to make one, I'm going to vamp for a little bit before I make my pick.
Okay.
I think it's helpful to maybe give some context on the. So, in real life, Jordan Evans was the number one recruit in the class of 2013. That is how it played out. And I thought it'd be interesting to maybe give some context around that decision, and because it was kind of controversial at the time. So Rambo was the number one recruit as a junior and pretty much all the way up until the final ranking. Jordan Evans was fourth, and in the final ranking, he jumped to number one. in IL's piece where they explained why they made the decision, they said that when they gauged the opinions of college coaches who recruited both, the college coaches favored Rambo slightly. When they did the same with high school coaches who had been around and prepared both, they tilted a bit more towards Evans. What they explained as giving the edge slightly towards Evans was in comparing what they viewed as their projection or ceiling. And it was that Evans had a slightly higher ceiling stepping into a dodging quarterback role at Syracuse than Rambo did as a lefty goal scorer at Maryland. And they said, here's the quote, consider their historical antecedents. There are plenty in only the last 10 years. For Evans, that group includes Mike LaVille, Kenny Nims, and JoJo Marasco. For Rambo, it's Joe Walters, Travis Reed, and Billy Griffin. That's obviously pretty impressive company, including All-Americans, national champions, and a Tewaaraton winner. While Walters may have a slight edge over LaVelle in terms of the most distinguished career to date, the role Evans will likely fill at Syracuse will be more valuable than the one Rambo will fill at Maryland. So I think that's a really interesting thing to look back on for a couple of reasons, because I think it shows you what the perception of both programs was in 2014 or 2013. This is still Syracuse at like peak Syracuse to a degree. It was assumed if you were the 22 and you were stepping into that role at Syracuse, you were going to be a superstar. And Evans stepping into that role was assumed to be a superstar. Prior to Rambo, Joe Walters, as they mentioned, is Maryland's best offensive player, probably since Frank Urso or Bob Boniello. But there just wasn't the track record. Like today, it's the whole, the 22 versus the 1 type thing. Since Rambo, Maryland's number 1 list includes 3 Tewaaraton winners and a bunch of guys. Prior to that, it didn't. And so I think it gives you, I would bet that if Rambo and Evans come along in 2020, Rambo gets ranked higher. Because I think Matt Rambo fundamentally changed the perception of what going to Maryland could do and could mean. And I think it's a little different now for Syracuse as well and Evans. I also just think that they didn't take into account, or probably because we just didn't have the evidence yet of the player development that Maryland has. Rambo was assumed that he would be an incredible goal scorer. He would score 50, 60 goals as a lefty shooter. Rambo wound up being a complete player. He wound up being the dodging quarterback that was presumed Evans would be. Rambo wound up being that. But no one really saw Maryland Tillman as that kind of program in 2014. So I think if you look at it with what we know now, I think Rambo was probably, the more talented player and wound up having a better career. And I think that if you had kind of viewed it more through that prism, I think Rambo probably gets ranked number 1. So with that being said, this actually was a pretty tough decision because there's 2 guys for this spot, 2 of my all-time favorite players. And I think you could rank a really great argument for either one. But it's partially my heart and also just partially the career that he had and the impact he had on the program. I am taking Matt Rambo number 1. I just think, and Ryan, you can take it off the screen. I'll put the banners up if you want.
Okay.
So Matt Rambo fundamentally changed Maryland's program forever. I think if Jared Bernhardt is maybe the most talented players played in Maryland, and Frank Urso maybe had the most decorated career, and Logan Wisnauskas I think has the points record, I think Matt Rambo is the most important player in the history of Maryland. Like, he's the guy who changed it. He's the guy who set what everyone else came after. And he won the first title in 40-something years, the first Tewaaraton in program history. And Rambo was he was a force of nature to a degree when he really got rolling. And he led as a personality, as a player. There was just a gravitational pull he had around him that guys followed him. And he was, again, fundamentally changed what Maryland's offenses could be. Maryland's offenses 2013, 14, 15 were kind of seen as stodgy, methodical, et cetera, et cetera. With Rambo, the first real escalation into Maryland having some of the best offenses in the country comes with Rambo, and he was a dominant player. He made 4 Final Fours, won a national title, won a Tewaaraton, was a tremendous NCAA tournament player, played great in the tournament every year he was in it. I think at one point he had the record for most points in the history of the NCAA tournament for a career. So it was tough. There was another guy on the list who might very well go number 2 that I really thought about, but I just think when you count for the career Rambo has, the talent level, he would have been great playing anywhere. He would have put up more points probably outside of Maryland, maybe if he played in a different type of system, but you can't really argue with his career. I think he's, by a slim nudge, the number 1 pick.
All right, so I think I know where Jake was going with his decision of who he was deciding with. I'll say, remember, we're going off of the prospect, going off of the player. I want to just make that clear because we've talked about the program at this stage till we were blue in the face in the 2010s. And their lack of success is not because of the player I'm going to draft for number 2. I'm going to go with Zach Currier at number 2. Jacob, was I thinking correctly?
You were, yes. It was Rambo
Yes.
or Currier for me.
Yeah. Again, kind of like with Tom Schreiber, it should not be judged on Princeton's lack of success in the doldrums of the program in the mid-2010s. Currier himself was an absolute two-way force of nature at midfield. He did it all. And he was part of that prototype that we still see today with Princeton now that they're having success with two-way midfielders. And Currier was the prototypical one for that program. And again, even though no NCAA tournament appearances in his career, still made a huge difference in the midfield with his goal scoring, his playmaking ability, his defense, his rides, his defense. So I think, Rambo, I think very well. Yes, his face-offs too. I mean, he did it all. I mean, yeah, Matt Rambo, as you said, in hindsight, you put it number 1 just because of the huge impact he made on those Maryland teams, winning the national title. He was up there, between number 1 and number 2 heading into the season anyway, in the rankings anyway. And I don't think you get too much of an argument against putting Rambo at number 1. But Currier, I think just – and you've seen how he's shined in his professional career as well. So I think that's why it's important to kind of separate individual success from program success, just because the program was in a downturn during that period. And trust us, we spent many a podcast trying to diagnose Princeton's ills in the first couple of years of our podcast. But Currier was definitely not one of those ills. If anything, he was one of the antidotes on that program. So I think Currier, you give the edge to Rambo because of the impact he made at Maryland, what he was able to accomplish, the prolific career he had. But I think Currier slots in very nicely at number 2.
I think Currier's senior season is the most underrated, forgotten about season in probably modern lacrosse. Currier had 24 goals, 34 assists, 130 ground balls, 21 caused turnovers, and he took 201 faceoffs and won them at a 57% clip. There has not been another season like that since, and really hadn't been a season like that prior, since probably Kyle Harrison or Max Theobald. And even then, the points were pretty substantial. The caused turnovers, ground balls, 130. It's incredible. He is an incredible player, but I think his college career is woeful. He was not a first-team All-American with that season, by the way, which is the most ridiculous kind of player selection, postseason award, whatever you want to call it, decision ever. All right, Safe, you're up.
Yeah, I thought this player was going to get taken off, so thinking about, back. But I'm going to go maybe the person who ushered in the transfer era of, that we lifted, Connor Canizario. I thought, when he was at Maryland in 2014, I was going to say, God, man, it's just going to be a problem. Whenever they play hockey, He's such a dynamic player. Just had a great freshman season, and the gentleman John Tillman just allowed him to leave to go to Denver. Just I thought it was one of the more gracious moves by Tillman. Maybe Denver was always his goal, and that wouldn't maybe there would have been
his brother played at Denver at the time.
Exactly. So it's like I thought, just a magnanimous move by Tillman, not even making any perfunctory restrictions of no big teams, or anything like that. This is obviously before player empowerment that we're in now, and then just blossomed at the Denver once he got there. Just a central piece of honestly helped to kickstart Denver's run. They had the semifinals in 2011, but we're always kind of knocking on the door. He comes in 2015, they win the title. Didn't really have that big of a postseason in 2016, but returned to the semifinals in 2017. So for him personally, having semifinal run with Maryland, one title and another semifinal, so 3 Final Fours, title. Being able to be a star in both teams and being able to fit so seamlessly into two programs that are very hyper specific and tough for anybody to let alone get playing time, but to excel to the level that he did. So I thought Connor would have been maybe one or maybe not one, but I thought the two or somebody. Yeah, so available at number 3. I'm glad to take him. So I'll take my Connor.
Tremendous career. Was ACC Freshman of the Year for Maryland? In that year, Maryland's last ACC ahead of Rambo. One of the more electric Dodgers that I think. Maryland, I don't think Maryland's had a player like him since he left. And they've had great players, but that kind of speed and quickness behind the cage, I don't think they've had that kind of guy. Denver hasn't either, to be quite honest. He was tremendous, just a lightning rod. And I think the guy who's kind of been quietly a little, because he kind of entered into the MLL, and I don't think he really ever caught quite on with the PLO. I think he might have just gone his own way, but I think he's kind of a bit underrated in hindsight. He was a tremendous player. All right, I'm up at 4. I think this is the guy who will have the highest. So, by the way, the initial rank by Evans was 1, Rambo was 2, and Tim Rotans was number 3. Connor Cannizzaro was 9th. Pardon me, 8th. Zach Currier was 5th. Yeah, 8th. Zach Currier was 5th. So we're all in the top 10. Compared to the initial ranking, I'm going to make what I'm almost certain will be the biggest leap, and pull a guy who was, still a top 100 player, but wound up having a pretty memorable and unique college career. And at number 4, I am going to take Dylan Malloy.
Ooh, you took my number 5 pick.
So Malloy was number 72 on the initial ranking, which I think tells you about how just offensively gifted he was. We all remember Malloy. A little, carries a little bit around the waistline. Was not the most dynamic guy in terms of speed or as an athlete. And I think even continuing to his PLO career, always kind of had to fight that sort of image, I think, a little bit of, maybe that sometimes he was aloof. It took him a while to kind of really catch on to the PLO. But anytime he played Dylan Malloy was productive everywhere he's been. And at Brown, he was the symbol for Lars Tiffany in getting that Brown team over the hump to the Final Four. And that Brown team is probably one of the more memorable and beloved, I think, teams of the past 10, 15 years. And he won the Tewaaraton that year, had another really good year the year after when Brown didn't make the tournament after Lars had left. But that 2016 season was it was a kind of fairy tale kind of stuff. And 62 goals, 54 points, or 54 assists for 116 points. And I think for among a lot of people, I often see this on Twitter, one of the great what ifs is what if he doesn't hurt his knee against Hopkins in the first round, and what if he's healthy, fully healthy? Because remember, he was they were load managing him against Maryland. He had torn his ACL, and he was playing in the Final Four against Maryland. He scored a goal, but they couldn't really give. If he's fully healthy, does Brown win that game, and does Brown win the national title? Does Lars leave for Virginia if Brown wins the national title? all kind of questions that go back to that unfortunate injury he had against Hopkins. But Dylan Malloy was a spectacular player. The other Touraton winner among this group, along with Matt Rambo.
Number 5. I was kind of waffling between Zach Miller and Colin Heacock with this. Because, Miller had the 2 years with Denver before he no longer enrolled, but they were big years. But I think you kind of have to go. I'll go with Colin Heacock, because you think about the 1-2 punch he had with Rambo and how they combined. I know you can't have one without the other, but I think kind of similar to what Rambo did for the Maryland program, Heacock did as well in a kind of Batman and Robin type role. And I think when you think of what he was able to do, especially with facilitating the ball, I think, and the impact that he had, I think I would go with Heacock. Maybe 5's a little high, but I looking at the list, I would have had Malloy in there as well, and you took Malloy, so I think I'll go with Heacock. Again, just for what he was able to do in his college career. You think about it, if it weren't for his teammate in Rambo, think of how much more highly regarded he would be with that national championship team. So I'll go with Heacock at number 5.
I'm a little surprised. I thought you were going to go. There was a different name, more closer to your hometown. I thought you were going to go with. But Heacock had a great career. That Rambo 1-2 punch. They were safe. They were a rock show. It was they were, a real kind of duo and personality. And Heacock going into attack, Heacock playing with Rambo at attack. That's what changed Maryland's season in 16. Before that, he was playing midfield. They moved him up, and they were immediate. I remember watching that first game. They played Drexel Tuesday night, something like that. It was back when Drexel just had the camera above the
street camp. Oh God, yeah.
And I think they put Heacock at attack. He scored on one of the first or second goals on an assist from Rambo, and they were off. No, the rest is history.
For my number 6, because I guess we can, allow our own feelings towards the player to not dictate, but play a little ball. I'm gonna go with Sergio Perkovic. Yeah, I think for a couple of reasons. One, I think this is Notre Dame was doing kind of well at this time, but they've really started to cook. This period, I think this season that they lost to Duke by the championship in 2014.
Mm-hmm. He had a great game in that championship.
Absolutely, wonderful game, and I think Sergio is actually maybe the prototype or the first wave of this. Again, I don't want to keep using rock star, but the glamour Notre Dame player. Part of it is just the Notre Dame machine. You could make an argument that Perkovic may not have been as elite as the accolades that he had received, but he was definitely a great player for Notre Dame. And just actually, they just kind of helped, I said, solidify this image of Notre Dame's kind of this glamour team. And I think this is where it kind of began, and just because of Sergio. I think part of it's it's just what you would think of a Notre Dame player lacrosse, right? 6'4", it's just 220, built a Greek god or something like that. And the broadcast, that was Eamon was the main ESPN. So anytime Notre Dame was there, just Berger, talked about a lot. So maybe that kind of colored my thing. But I'm a player of you were saying, the charisma of Rambo and Heacock, the versatility of Zach Currier. Yeah, Sergio to me is one of these players of this era, that was just talked about in the lacrosse community, and it's kind of helped usher in this high level performance stage for Notre Dame. So yeah, I'm pretty certain my man Sergio at number 6.
The Motor City Hitman, as they nicknamed him. He amazing NCAA tournament player. I mean, in the Final Four game against Denver, what do you have, like 5 goals in 1 quarter? He was spectacular when he was on. All right, we've had an offensive,
and I think and one other point to add on the saves. I think the recruitment of Perkovic, that's a type of player that kind of got Notre Dame to where they are now. Guys like that started the star power there with the Fighting Irish.
Yeah.
So I definitely see him kind of like his Courier as the proto to Princeton's midfield moxie. Perkovic was kind of the start of the rock star at South Bend trend.
And at the midfield with that size and speed, Dobson's kind of similar along those lines for Notre Dame. Certainly Perkovic, kind of said so. All right, we've had an offensive show so far, all 6 picks in the offensive end. I'll do Courier kind of 2-way. But I'm going to take our first pure defensive player. And Rambo was the superstar on the 2017 Maryland team. He was obviously like the main name and won the Tewaaraton. But the best player in the NCAA tournament was not Matt Rambo. It was Tim Muller.
Oh, stealing another pick from me. I
told you. I thought you were gonna go Muller at 5.
I know. I hang out with his cousins all the time. So
Tim Muller, Schmeisser Award winner. One of the in terms of the lineage of lockdown Maryland defenders. I know Adam kind of holds this position that he thinks better than Ajax, better than Makar, better than pretty much all of it. He thinks Muller was Maryland's best #1 cover defender. And I think there's a good argument for it. He took on in that NCAA tournament Connor Fields from Albany, kept him in check. Connor Cannizzaro from Denver kept him in check. And then Trey LeClaire and Eric Fennell at Ohio State kept them in check. 3 straight games, Maryland locked down their opponents defensively to win the NCAA tournament. He, as unassuming as it kind of got for a defender. I mean, Makar was, Maryland came later, was the big, again, personality kind of very demonstrative player, physical. Ajax was just a savant at in terms of footwork and things like that, and obviously a big kind of person as well. Muller was just quiet as a church mouse, but you just could not get in front of that guy, and he was a crucial part of Maryland winning that national championship. Again, Rambo was the big name. There were other big names, but Muller, I think, was as important as any of them, and went on to have a tremendous career and obviously season at Maryland. So I'm going Tim Muller at 8. Or pardon me, 7.
Number 8. All right, so I did kind of give away the game a little bit when I picked Heacock. And this is going to be the caveat with, as brief as it was, he was very, very good. I'll go with Zach Miller at 8. I know, yes, the caveat is you're only going to get 2 years. But think about how much production he had in those 2 years. The role he played in that national championship run in 2015 with Denver. So again, I think this is a case of, with the caveat that, you're not going to have him the full length, but you're going to get a lot of production out of him when he does, and you're going to love every minute of it when you do have him. So I'll go with Zach Miller. It might be a little bit of a controversial pick only because of it being a lot shorter than the production you're going to get out of anyone else in this list. But again, take a look at his stats from 2015 and 2016 and what a difference maker he was for that Pios team, with an natty to boot with it.
Zach Miller was a wizard, man. I mean, he was one of the most skilled players that I have. Also, you got 3 years out of him, correct? 14, 15, and 16? He was there 16, wasn't he?
Let me just see. Denver website does not have 2014.
He was there 14. Yeah, he was there 2014 as a freshman, he had 38 goals.
Yeah. So he was there 2014. So you should get 3 years out of it. You don't get his senior year.
And listen, again, senior year, if he's on that Denver team, do they get back to the championship? They could have. They were very close to Maryland that year. But he was incredible, dude. So talented. Just one of the most talented players in the midfield spot, I think I can remember. I know Safe was always a huge fan of him. He was a tremendous player.
Guys, maybe we've got to go a little bit defense here. I don't know if maybe a little bit of seen as a homer, but he was one of my favorite players. Helped Hop get that last Final Four, that they most recent one. And I was thinking, maybe going too heavy with Notre Dame because I was thinking of Garrett here. But I'm going to go with Nick Fields, multiple-time All-American at Hop. Like I said, intelligent player, physical, helped get that resurgence that Petro had, late era Petro at Hopkins. Part of fun. I remember, post the Rabel Harrison glory years. Hopkins kind of in the wilderness, kind of make it into the tournament, but getting blown out by 9 or 12, to Virginia or Duke, and then that season 2014, that the play this incoming class, they just renewed this energy, and obviously love the hitters out there, but it always felt like this was a different Hop defense, and I always really liked Nick Fields, and just felt like I'm looking back at this, the ranking, it's around 13th is pretty fair, and I think he actually probably outplayed his ranking. So maybe a little bit of a homer pick here, but I'm going to go with Nick Fields. I think
it's a little high. I'm looking at my board. I have.
Yeah, there's another Hopkins player I thought you were going to go with when you were saying homer pick, but
I had 4 defenders above him, not counting Muller. So he's on my list. I think he's in the top 25 mix. I think it's a little high, but he was a very good player, for sure. And did have a nice career. He was Hopkins' #1 defender for a couple years there, and some decent. Obviously, the 2015 team made the Final Four. His ranking by no means he was 14th. He, I think, gave you maybe not everything. He wasn't a first-team All-American, maybe, but it wasn't like you looked at that and thought, "Man, we didn't get enough out of Nick." He had a really good career.
Yeah, I think again maybe coloring my pick. My fondness for him, but if we're allowed that courtesy, I'm happy with my pickup.
All right, I actually lied. I'm also going to go maybe a bit of a homer pick here, but more I lied about the guy who's going to make the biggest jump, because I am going to take a guy who did not make the initial top 100. Not unsurprising considering his position and kind of where he was. He was a bit of a tweener when he was coming into school. But I think we're kind of at the point now where we've gone through the elite offensive guys, the guys you absolutely had to have. And I think there's a couple other defenders who are worthy of going pretty high up here, guys who won national championships. But this guy also won a national championship, and he was I think, indispensable as those guys. And a position that sometimes gets maybe overlooked, undervalued. At number 10, I am going to take, again, I've taken 3 17 Terps. Obviously, I'm acknowledging my bias a bit. That was a team close to my heart. But I took the face of it, maybe the best player. I took the best player in the tournament. I'm going to take the leader of the 2017 Maryland Terrapins, and I'm going to take Isaiah Davis-Allen.
Ooh, IDA, yes.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Lethal was the first team All-American, I think, 3 times, which, if I'm correct, I think he's the only 3-time first team All-American under Tills. Was elite from the moment he got there, and especially from 2015 onwards. Lockdown, short stick cover guy, great in transition. I think he's the guy who, if you saw later on in Till's run, especially when the shot clock, when they pushed more, guys like Puglisi put up some big numbers. I think IDA could have been a guy who, that was always the thing with IDA. It was the hashtag free IDA, wanted to get him more in offensive positions. But Yeah, I think we're at the point now with where there's a lot of defensive guys, I think, who I would come off the board here soon. And I think he was just as good and crucial as any of those. So, yeah, I think he's the guy. Was not ranked in the top 100, which made sense. Again, kind of he was a bit of a tweener offense-defense guy. Settled in at short stick and had an amazing career. But I'm going to go ID8 at number 10. You need a short stick defensive midfielder, a great one to be a championship team, and he was fit that bill for sure.
All right, number 11, I think I'm going to go defensively here. I think for number 11, I'll go with Garrett Epple.
Yeah.
Out of Notre Dame. I think, again, kind of being one of those prototypical players. I know I'm kind of using that as a theme for kind of setting up the identities of these programs later on, but you think of Garrett Epple and the way he shut down offensive players there at Notre Dame and led to some good runs there for the Irish. I think we were discussing at the beginning of the podcast, what he was able to do early on, right from the word go for the Irish too. So I think in terms of a lockdown type of guy, he fit the Irish identity, especially when you think of Notre Dame's identity in the 2010s was more of a defensive minded program before the turn to an offensive one in the 2020s. But you think of those deep Notre Dame Final Four runs, you're thinking about their defense, and Garrett Epple was definitely the quarterback of that Irish defense and did a heck of a job at defending some of the best in the game, especially in ACC play against whoever they faced in the tournament. So I'll put Epple at number 11 for my pick there.
Yeah, he started by the end of his freshman year. He was a starter. He came in and kind of benefited that they had Matt Landis at the start, so he didn't have to jump right immediately. But by the time his career was over, he was the first team All-American, and he took over for Landis as their number one defender. And then, as Ryan said, after him, you get to, the rest of these guys. Sean Light now, John Sexton was in there, who have continued on that lineage. Epple was on the initial ranking, so just kind of run down some of these.
Epple was 57th in between Muller and Perkovic.
Yeah, Muller 56, Perkovic was 58. IDA, as we mentioned, went unranked. Nick Fields was, I think, 14. So, again, all guys who were ranked pretty highly from the word go. All right, safe up, number 12.
Boys, I love big game players. I think one of the biggest big game players on this list, maybe not the elite attackman, but especially in 2016, really came into the clutch. I know Jakey blacked out that series, but I'm going with Luke Goldstock here with my 12th pick. North Carolina, just absolutely, not just consistent. It kind of sounds like he does an actual hitter, but yeah, absolutely. One of North Carolina's most prolific attackmen, had a breakout season in 2015 with 50 goals. Obviously, I think the 2016 North Carolina run, last time that North Carolina won the title. But that team, just the way that they were just able to navigate through the entire tournament, with just almost a team of destiny kind of vibe to it, and just overcoming that Maryland guy. I remember I was there. It was Philly, right?
Yep.
We were in the press box, and just it was an epic game. Just the swings and emotion, to just the amazing, competitiveness of both teams, and just the way it ended. Again, shake that. Sorry to be you, my friend, obviously, but just the drama and the theater that we really hope to see at this level, was really there on display. And shout out to Coach Bresci, knocking on the door for a little while, kind of have a disappointing tournament runs, and then kind of finally puts it all together in 2016. It's really cool to be on the field and seeing him. That was the dab era. You remember? He's doing the dabs. It's just great. It's just great. It was a fun team, and Luke performance, it's just not just memorable, it's historic for this Carolina team. Given the fact that they haven't gotten to even the title game since they obviously had the great run in 2021. Yeah, I think this is a special team. Luke was a really just like maybe a catch lightning in a bottle type of thing, but like it's not just that. You know, he had a really good career at North Carolina, and yeah, he's going to be my 12th pick.
Can't argue with it. That bitter Sankey Goldstock attack group they had in 15. A lot of people thought 15 was going to be the year. That really looked like that was going to be that team's run. I think they were number one in the country for a long part of it.
Yeah.
Bitter Sankey and Goldstock combined for about 100 and almost 220 something points. So that was a group of Goldstock. Yeah, continued it. So certainly there's a couple other UNC guys on here I could see making an appearance. That was a really great. This is a really great class for them. All right, we're at an interesting spot here. There's some defenders I think belong still kind of who could potentially go off the board. There's some really kind of good understated offensive players, I think. And I think that's the direction I'm going to lean, and maybe I won't beat the homer accusations on this one. But I think when you consider what this guy accomplished in his last 2 seasons in school, when you consider the career that he's had overall, continues into this day in his 30s in the PLL, but especially being the leader of some of the great memorable mid-major teams of the 2010s, I am going to pick Ryan Drenner from Towson. Drenner was the leading scorer at Towson in 2017, 59 points when they got to the Final Four. Had a terrific, was just such a consistent player. Great game, almost got Towson over the hump against Ohio State in that semifinal game, but was crucial against Penn State and Syracuse. Before that, and just really had several such great NCAA tournament performances for Towson that 2 years. Towson beat Denver, who was the 2 seed in 2016. They went on the road, got to a quarterfinal the next year. They went one better and made the Final Four. And Drenner was the straw that stirred the drink. Towson had some really good offensive players in that time. Joe Sider, Mazza, Mike Lynch, Spencer Park. But it all kind of flowed downstream from Drenner. He was the guy that led the bunch and who got the opponent's number one assignment. And again, from Towson played big hitters during that NCAA tournament. They played Denver, Loyola, Penn State, Syracuse, Ohio State, and he produced. And he's continued to this day to have a really great, strong professional career, and be a guy who's been a factor in the professional ranks. So I think he's the guy who, maybe, again, a quieter offensive career than some of these big names, but one of the great careers in the history of Towson, and helped get them to a Final Four.
All right. I am going to go with a semi-homer pick. I say semi-homer pick because he started off as a homer, then went to Jake's school. I'll go with Dylan Maltz at number 14. So made an impact at his start at Syracuse. Then made his way over to Maryland, made an impact on that national title team as well. So Rich kept on getting richer at Maryland, and it yielded to a national championship. Now, not as prolific as Rambo, but I think during that 2017 run, we did talk a lot about how Maltz being there as a second or third option, it really opened up the game for him and provided for him to have a lot of big games in that run, especially in the NCAA tournaments. So I think when you think of Dylan Maltz, I know as a Syracuse fan, it's a lot of what could have been, especially with, how that 2016 team was looking. Could have used him. But, wait, what year did he transfer? Was it 2016 or 2017? Did he
transferred in 15 actually, after his freshman
15,
year.
yeah. So, yeah, you think about that 16 Syracuse team and, how good they were heading into the tournament. Well, imagine they still had him on board there as an Orange. They could have gone even further. And he ended up being a very big difference maker for the Terps, too, and gave them that lethal offense, just another weapon that defenses had a very hard time of trying to cover. So I'll go with Dylan Maltz at 14.
Yeah, Run Dempsey. That was the attack line with him, Rambo and Heacock. And a guy who could really – I remember the championship game against Ohio State. They put a shorty on him so they could bump up a pole to the midfield for Rotans and Kelly, and he made Ohio State pay several goals in that championship, taking advantage of the shorty. It's what made that Maryland offense so hard to defend. Maybe a little high. I actually thought there was another Syracuse player Ryan was going to go with here when he mentioned Homer picks. But certainly had a very good career. And this is kind of, the mix right about where I would have taken him.
Yeah, it's going to go another way here, but I think I'm going to stick with this Carolina team, Jake and Rye. I'm going with Stephen Kelly. Now,
I would not go there.
Really? Oh, okay.
Didn't have a very.
I thought
I think you're thinking of another Kelly. Patrick was the one who had the good 16 year.
For face-off, I was the type of
the face-offs.
Yeah.
Fair. Yeah, that's true. That's fair.
That's saying. It's like not as I was saying. I'm trying to be sacrilegious here, and the parents said Zach, but I was like the versatility of being the face-off and midi, like not the scoring prowess that Zach has, and maybe not as high on the ground balls, but like probably maybe has a little bit of the edge on the face-off, but not as bad. But deficit in ground balls, and offensively maybe lacking, but that could be Kelly's specialized role. And again, just having seen this Carolina team, playing hockey, like it was this like class, this era that really like flummoxed me a lot. And it was like Kelly was one of those guys, just getting face-offs and just a player all around. And again, just that versatility is kind of why I really kind of liked him at this position. And so, like, I'm thinking of like maybe Zed here, but I think like Carolina's, didn't win it all or make consistent Final Four, but winning the title and like Virginia's kind of dearth of postseason success in this era kind of like maybe lean like for Steven. So I'm going with Stephen Kelly here.
No, that's fair. I'm wrong. I was thinking I kind of forgotten his face-off, how important he was to the dot, especially in that 16, that championship game. I remember. Yeah, I think that's a fair pick. All right, am I up at 16? I will. I'll maybe take a Syracuse guy. I don't know if Ryan was going to go here. So wait, did I miss a guy? Or I feel like I've miscounted.
So we've done Goldstock 12, Drenner 13, Maltz 14, Kelly 15.
Am I supposed to be up at 16 here? I feel like I'm odd numbers.
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. You went 1-4. No, you went 1-4, 7, 10,
13, 16.
13. Now it's your turn. Yep.
Okay, my bad. That's why I don't do math. At 16, I am going to take Nick Mariano. Transferred into Cuse from UMass. At UMass from the jump, he was the best player on that team. But then he went to Cuse, and really, I think that was the period where the Evans, I think absence kind of was felt to a degree, because after Kevin Rice graduates, that was a Cuse team that kind of was led a lot, and to a large degree by its midfield. But they brought Mariano in after Rice graduated in 15, and I thought he did a heck of a job kind of carrying the stead for Cuse for a couple years there. Had 35 goals to lead the team in 2016, and they got to a quarterfinal and lost to Maryland. Then in 17, he was their second leading scorer, 34 goals, again, 50 points. As that Cuse team, I think those are a couple Cuse years that, at the time, I think there were frustrations by the Orange fan base because they were getting deep into the Final Four drought years. But I thought those were Cuse teams who, by and large, really overachieved. The 2016 team, I think, won the ACC and got to a quarterfinal after they had lost so much from that 2015 class. And then the 2017 team was all those one-goal wins. They were number one in the country for a long stretch of that season. I don't think they were in that tier with Maryland or Denver necessarily, but I think those were cases where Desco was coming the last couple of years where Desco really squeezed a lot out of the Orange. No pun intended. And I just think that it got kind of the job those guys did in terms of overachieving, I think, was sort of lost because fans were just frustrated by the fact that the team wasn't making Final Fours. And I think he was a big part of that transferring in from UMass. That was pure. It's tricky because Cuse lost. Like, they lost Wisnauskas, so that's always kind of remembered. But Cuse had some success in the portal as well during this time period, picking up guys like Nicky Galasso from UNC, picking up Mariano from UMass. As, again, it's kind of part of, I guess, the whole story of that Desco run, the late era of Desco. Like, there's a lot of good and bad there. There's a lot of things to be frustrated about, and I'm sure Ryan can kind of speak more on it, but there were also, I think, some really good teams in there that just kind of came a bit short, and maybe if they get to a Final Four here or there, maybe Desco's prolongs his career. But Mariano had a heck of a career, and I think this is right about his spot. I think there's a lot of defensive guys I think who are going to come off the board here pretty soon.
I am, for my 17th pick, I think I might go Zed Williams, even though didn't live up to his ranking hype. You know, he was number 4 recruit coming in, but when you think about his whole body of work, he was still very solid for those Virginia teams. He wasn't otherworldly like other Virginia recruits have been, especially in that era. And he does have the misfortune of being kind of in the back end of the Starsia era. I think kind of similar to Zach Currier's situation. You base it off the player, not the program's success. But Williams held his own when you look at his stats. Still put together a nice career with the Hoos. And again, maybe not as prolific as they thought he was going to be, but you look at his stats. As a midfielder, getting over 50 points.
His senior year,
50 points a season. Honorable. He was honorable mention All-American. So again, maybe not what they were expecting, but he still put together a very solid career and ended up having a very good pro career after that too. So he was able to extend his career too. With that's, and I think that helps keep him in the top 25 as well. So maybe not the top 5 projection that they maybe wanted to get at Virginia, but he still ended up having a solid career for the Hoos and ended up making a good career out of it too with the pro game.
A guy who was a better pro than he was a college player, which is pretty rare.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of those guys necessarily, but he was one of them. He was PLL MVP, I think, in 2020, the shortened season. I think he was a guy who just Starsia never quite figured out how to put him together. Virginia had a lot of guys in that time who the offense just did not, considering the talent they had, it did not go together. When he finally got with Lars that senior year, he was tremendous. I think if Lars had been there his whole career, would have had a much more prolific career, as I think you kind of saw in the PLL. So just ridiculously, again, so talented. Like, he was a guy, as far as talent goes, he absolutely was a top 5 player. Again, and a better pro career too.
I think he deserves some recognition. I mean, that he wasn't number. I was thinking about going Jordan Evans because we talked about with Zed Williams like not living up, but like it wasn't. He wasn't a flop, completely. It's not his fault that the team gave him 22. It's not his fault. Like he was ranked number 1. Like maybe a little bit lower ranking. Probably his career more. In hindsight, but I actually for right now. I'm going to go Gavin McBride, Princeton. Like, not like a stellar career, but definitely had like a big breakout senior season, with 50 plus goals. And I think he eclipsed 70. Like, again, this is kind of that weird era for Princeton. Kind of was mentioned by Virginia. I don't think Madeline may have been hired during their career. I'm trying to think of like
Madeline. He was there with Madeline in Madeline's senior season.
So yeah, like
Or no, pardon me. Madeline coached him during his senior season.
his senior. So yeah, going. I don't know, coincident or not. Yeah, that's a year Gav broke out, but that's also at least part of or helps be the bridge to this new era of Princeton lacrosse that's obviously blossomed into back into national prominence. Maybe got as many Final Fours though as I would hope, but being top ranked for recruiting and just being kind of one of these big teams back on the board. I think that's helped. But yeah, I think Gavin, had the really good, strong, solid career with Princeton. Again, we're in the 18-19s here, so having like the all the elite players really kind of already been taken off the board. But I think like this is a kind of player like maybe if he had Mads there for like his entire career, maybe it's a little bit more prolific. But especially just given what Madeline's done during his time there, with the players that he had. So a little bit of timing didn't align perfectly, but having that senior season breakout, like I said, I think we see the potential in there that may have been more available if they a little bit of a consistency in coaching and stuff like that. Or Madeline was there 2 or 3 seasons prior. So I'm gonna go with McBride here at 18. I'm happy with his choice.
Yeah, I look at that 17 Princeton team, and it just kind of befuddles me that they weren't better. They were. I mean, they lost by 8. They lost 18-17 to Cornell the last week of the season. That cost them. They were in Ivy League play prior to that. They were 1-1, 2-1, 3-1, 4-1. That I think would have got them second in the Ivy League, which that year, which they probably would have wound up. I think it might have just been a jersey color situation. But then they lose. I remember this game. They lost to Brown in the Ivy League semifinal, and they were on the bubble, kind of. And if they had beaten Brown, they might have been really in a position to make the tournament. That's 2017 is Sauer's freshman year. It's Courier's senior year. So Sauers and Courier cross over together. Sauers puts up 82 points as a freshman. McBride has 54 goals as a senior. Courier's senior year. Austin Sims is in there. Their goalie play is pretty good with Tyler Blaisdell, say 53%. I don't know. The defense wasn't great, and that was probably really what undid them. A lot of 17, 18 goals given up. But there are some of those Princeton teams you look back, there was just something just wasn't right. I don't really know what it was, but there was so many talent on those teams, and it's kind of hard to figure out why it didn't all. Defense, honestly, was a big part of it. When you look back, they just didn't really have the horses on that inside of the field, kind of like Yale, I guess, today. But it does kind of befuddle you a bit. All right, 19. I'm going to take a page out of Safe's book. I'm going to take a Tar Heel. And I'm going to take a guy who honestly grew on me over his college career. He was a guy who had a lot of fanfare and hype because he was ranked very high coming in here. He was ranked 19th. And I guess we just want to point out the initial rankings. Mariano was 34th. Zed was 4th. And Gavin McBride was ranked. Let's see if I can find it. McBride was 84th. So a lot of guys again kind of in their general spots. I'm going to keep a guy actually in the exact spot, 19th to 19th. I'm going to take Austin Pafani. Was the number 1 defender on that 16 Tar Heels team. I think, he grew on me over his college career. He came with a lot of fanfare. I always felt those UNC defenses didn't quite live up to some of the name billing they had, and I thought that was a part of why they didn't make runs, as extended runs as they could have in those years. But Pafani, during that that run, got called upon to guard so many great players. They played Notre Dame with the Kavanaugh, Loyola and Pat Spencer, and then Rambo. And Pat had 5 assists in that Final Four game. The only 1 goal, and a lot of that was kind of garbage time. If you remember, Carolina got out to like a huge lead, so Buffoni kept him in check in the early part of that game. In the quarterfinal game against Notre Dame, he held Kavanaugh to just 2 goals on 7 shots. And then Rambo did have a pretty spectacular game against them. Those guys were college or high school teammates, I believe, or played against each other in Philly. But Fonny, I think, really rose to the occasion that championship run for the Tar Heels. And I think if he hadn't, I don't know if they win. So I think he's a guy who this is, I think, the right spot, sticking him right where he came in at 19. All right, 6 picks left.
All right, number 20. I think I'm going to go off the board a bit with this one, but another key cog in that 2017 Brown run. Might go with Larkin Kemp.
Yeah, that's a good. Honestly, that's probably maybe too low, to be honest with you.
Yeah, not ranked
that's
top 100 heading into the recruiting class, but think about the impact he did as long stick midi of that Brown Bears team in that Final Four run. As much of an impact Dylan Malloy had on that team, where would that Brown team be without Larkin Kemp in the middle, causing all chaos and havoc out there? Definitely embodied a Lars Tiffany type of guy. If you follow him on social media, still one of the biggest believers in that Brown Bears program as well. Guy just lived and breathed being a Brown Bear. And I think what he was able to accomplish there at Brown, again, Malloy gets all his flowers, but you got to give Kemp some of his as well, because I don't know if the Brown state that they were that year without what Larkin Kemp did in the midfield. So I'll go with Larkin Kemp. Again, not top 100 to begin with, but boy, did he make an impact before all was said and done.
Yeah, I think this shows you how many great we talk with the recruiting rankings a lot, and I'm more of a believer than others, but it tells you, there's so many great players out there, man. There's so many guys who we don't know about now who are going to go on and have great college careers. And I honestly, looking at it, I would probably, in hindsight, have put Kemp closer to the top 10. He was an incredible player. I mean, his senior year, he had, in 17, the year after the Final Four run, he had 8 goals, 9 assists, 77 ground balls, and 27 caused turnovers. The 2016 year, the year they made the Final Four, he had 6 goals, 12 assists, 93 ground balls, and 35 caused turnovers. Honestly, yeah, I think it's good call, Ryan. I just blanked him. Hell of a pick. It should be higher, and I think you're right. Malloy was the Torreton winner and the best player, maybe, but Kemp embodied that Brown team more than anybody. Like, his vibe, everything was what Lars and that program built. And I really enjoyed his maybe good-natured or maybe a little different shots at Lars during the Brown-Virginia game a couple years ago. I think it was good-natured, but there was definitely a little bit of there was an undercurrent. There was an undercurrent there.
Yeah, he's very much a very fun follow during Brown's games. So
you're right. He lived and breathed it, and Lars left. So, it was interesting. That was during that whole Brown Virginia final or first round game a couple years ago. I should say. All right, safe 21.
Well, point of order. Maybe I just blanked out. Did you guys say Jack Bruckner?
No.
All
right, because I was going to go give your boy Townsend Joe a shout, but then I was like, did Jack get taken off the board? And again, not one of the elite, but definitely had a very good career at Duke. Had meaningful minutes in the 2014 run. I think he started early that season as well.
He came in. I think he came. Did he get hurt? I think he got hurt before the Final Four in 14. Quarterfinal. I think he got hurt in the Hopkins game.
So Duke, wasn't peak Duke, but you still got the title run in 2014, and kind of was the bridge to the second. Again, they didn't reach the mountaintop, but from 2018 to 2020, runner-up or Final Four. So, it was at the period from 2014 to 2017 where we weren't at the height of the absolute peak years, for early Dano. But, they did have a title that consistently made the tournament, quarterfinal appearance in 2017. Again, not another title. But, yeah, I thought Jack always had a good game to him. Like, smart player, one of Duke's, consistent scorers. And I was just thinking, I was like, yeah, he's not on the board. I'm going to grab him. So I'm going to take, Duke's Jack Bruckner at 21.
One more time, I'm going to go back to the 17 Terps. One of my all-time favorite players. Honestly, I feel maybe he might be a little bit too low here. I kind of kept pushing off just because I didn't want to take too many Terps, but he had a tremendous career, and honestly, I think a terrific career that might be on the lower end of what his career could have been. At 22, I'm going to take Tim Rotans, who was third in this class, right behind Rambo. At one point early in his career, he got vertigo and missed an entire season in 2015 because of it. And so he'd kind of been forgotten about by the time 2016 rolled around. He played on that second midfield. The 2017, the championship year, he had 33 goals for the Terps. And then in 2018, this was the season that just endeared him to me so much. 41 points, was Maryland's leading scorer from the midfield, and he basically was their best short stick defensive midfielder. Maryland had no shorties that year, and Tim Rotans was going two ways as their best offensive player and their best defensive midfielder. A real throwback guy that he turned into, even though he came in as an attackman. I think a classic guy you think of who really would have thrived in the shot clock era. And I think going from 3 to 22 is, again, he had a great career. I think if he had, didn't have vertigo, what happened, I think he could have put up bigger numbers, maybe plays at attack, but it all worked out in the end. And he proved to be just a great all-around player and contributor to that memorable Terps team.
All right. How about for 23? This will be my last pick. This one might be a little bit off the board, but there's an explanation to this. And it's thanks to an injury, a couple injuries he had that deferred his impact a bit. I'll go with Chris Keating out of Yale.
Yes, great pick.
Yeah, because yes, he was classified in the 2013 list, but he got hurt on two different occasions, so he was able to have his eligibility extended a year, where he would be part of the 2018 Yale Bulldogs national championship team, and very much a key cog in that Yale defense that won that title. So while we're talking about the impacts of the 2016 UNC team or the 2017 Maryland team, Keating's impact comes a year later than most of these guys because of his extra year of eligibility that he receives. But you think about those Yale defenses, and Keating's going to be a huge part of those defenses that lead them to a national title. So I'll go with Chris Keating at number 23. I wouldn't say maybe necessarily off the board. He was a top 50 recruit, but I think that deferred impact kind of sneaks up on you a little bit, that you forget, hey, that's right, he was part of that 2013 recruiting class for the Bulldogs.
No, he was right up one of the next couple of names on my list. So I think you nailed it. A guy, and also, again, kind of sneaks up on you. By that 2018 season, by the end, Chris Fake had kind of become the number one. Speaking of other guys who had impossibly long college careers, Chris Fake was there for 6 years. I think that he was, before before Fake really emerged, he was their top cover guy and played on some great Yale teams and the championship teams. I think that's a great call, right? 100%.
Go with Jeff. I want to make sure. Did we say Doss? Right? We already did Shane Doss. Right?
Who?
Shane Doss.
No, we did not say Shane Doss.
We did not say Shane Doss.
Sorry, Joe. I was going to go with Joe. I was like, he wasn't as prolific as Ryan, Jake, but I thought Joe had a really complimentary role there, a little bit of a volume shooter. But having those two guys there, for the 4 years, getting a good kind of essentially probably like peak Townsend under Nads, helped to fuel that Final Four run and other postseason success that they had during their times. But yeah, I think I got to go with Doss here. Like, what was his rank? He was really low rank. He was below Sider. He was 86 ranked. But again, part of this like really big time class at Notre Dame that I think when we do the full tally, maybe not as good as Maryland, but it's right up there for a really prolific class. Probably maybe North Carolina, given how many guys we picked in the top 25 would also be there. But I think Shane, also with Garrett, right? Did you pick and Sergio, my earlier pick, kind of this core of like, this is, kind of a new Notre Dame kind of glamour team that, was, charismatic, thrilling, and, always, provided an entertaining product for the fans out there. So, Doss had a really strong career. Obviously, Notre Dame's had some, other great goalies since then, boy, Intimate. But I think, Shane Doss deserves, to get some love, and, I'm going to take it with my last pick.
All right, we've come to pick 25, the last pick. Just some names that haven't been picked. Like the highest ranked player that did not get picked was Will Reynolds, who was ranked 7th for Princeton. Had a decent career, but didn't really kind of flash up to that ranking. Ryan Lukovic, 12th for Virginia, had a pretty productive career, but part of that, I think Ryan mentioned the end of that Starsia era where things kind of fell by the wayside. Sean Coleman, 15th for Harvard, part of a pretty stacked class for Harvard that didn't quite live up to the billing. And a couple years after this would be the end of Wojcik's run there. Some other guys I thought about, Scott Furman of Syracuse, who wound up being their top defender, I think 2017. Really good career for the Orange. Eric Scott, Yale, was one of their best attackmen, kind of pre-Ben Reeves, coming through on those Shea teams that started to build up. Nick Apani for Penn State, really productive college career, and was on that 17 team with Ament that got Penn State into the NCAA tournament. So there's a lot of different ways you can go here. We're at 25, so there's a lot of good players. Just kind of choose kind of who you liked the most, and that's sort of the vibe here, I think, at this point. But I'm going to go with a guy I did like, and a guy who I do think wound up having a pretty darn good college career. Even though I think he wound up having a college career that was probably on the lowest end of what it possibly could be. I think if you go back and you play this guy's career a couple more times, he probably winds up being a lot better, and maybe winds up being closer to what fans envisioned or wanted him to be. And maybe if his original ranking is a little different, his career gets a lot more appreciative shine. To close it out, at 25, I am taking Jordan Evans.
You went full circle.
Good.
I think Jordan Evans had a really good career, and I think that for a plethora of reasons, no one ever cares to acknowledge it. Jordan Evans came in 2014 wearing the number 22. And just let me give you an idea. They mentioned that original, thing that he was going to become the number 22 dodging attackman. Well, when he came in, Syracuse had a guy by the name of Kevin Rice who was in that spot, who had 80 points Evans' freshman season. Kevin Rice was there again in 2015 for Syracuse, and he had 84 points. So the role that they kind of wanted for him, he couldn't play immediately. Should he have been put number 1? No. I think if you looked at the talent there, he probably was 4 or maybe a little lower. But not only that, I think by the end of his career, because people had kind of, when he finally did carve out a role, fans had kind of given up on him. I think it wasn't acknowledged. As I just talked about, some good Syracuse teams he played a big part on. He had 27 goals his junior year. As he was
he kind of followed the JoJo Marasco path. The high expectations, Didn't necessarily live up to them his freshman and sophomore years, but then found a niche in the team and played a good role when all is said and done. But I think maybe in comparison to JoJo had the national title game appearance.
JoJo had a big senior year, yeah. Like
Yeah.
he was up towards on, and he scored a lot of like big walk-off game-winning goals. And
yeah.
But Evan's senior year, he has 27 goals. That's 5th on Syracuse's team. He was 5th in points. That was the Syracuse team that made the quarterfinals. Pretty darn good. His senior year on that Syracuse team, if Syracuse goes to the Final Four that year, I think it probably really changes how people look at his career. That season, he had 44 points. He was 3rd on Cuse in points. Like, again, is it the number 1 recruit? No. No question about it. But there are a lot of guys, as we just looked at, who have been like the 4th ranked recruit who didn't have great careers, and no one cares. But because it was number 1 and because it was over Rambo, who went on to have this sparkling career, I think that, and again, what if Syracuse just tries and puts him at the midfield to begin with and never is like, yeah, you're going to be the 22. It doesn't give him the 22. He just goes to the midfield. Maybe he has a 4-year productive career. Maybe if he gets on the field earlier, he has a better junior and senior year. I think his career, kind of hit on the lower end of what it could be. And I think when you look at it, compared to some of the other names left, I think he's absolutely, this is a more than fair ranking. And I think it's fair to, full circle get him in here. Again, you played his career over 10 times. I think he probably got it on the lower end of what it could be. So I'm going Jordan Evans, 25.
It's a good list. It's a respectable list.
Ethical.
Ethical drafting.
All right, so that's our top 25 list. Did it just nicely so we wouldn't get sued by other podcasts. Good job on the branding.
That's what we're looking for here.
So just to run down for those listening on audio, our top 25 is number 1, Matt Rambo, number 2, Zach Currier, 3, Connor Cannizzaro, 4, Dylan Malloy, 5, Colin Heacock, 6, Sergio Perkovic, 7, Tim Muller, 8, Zach Miller, 9, Nick Fields, 10, Isaiah Davis-Allen, 11, Garrett Epple, 12, Luke Goldstock, 13, Ryan Drenner, 14, Dylan Maltz, 15, Stephen Kelly, 16, Nick Mariano, 17, Zed Williams, 18, Gavin McBride, 19, Austin Pifani, 20, Larkin Kemp, 21, Jack Bruckner, 22, Tim Rodents, 23, Chris Keating, 24, Shane Doss, 25, Jordan Evans.
Justice for Jordan.
That is our list. All right. Any last thoughts before we wrap up?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. I was going to say, Ryan, you had mentioned that you, before we got on, you were curious about the class rankings. And I do think this is a really interesting kind of one to look at because I think it kind of portends a lot of where some of these programs would go. The number 1 class, 2014 or 2013, was Maryland. And this is obviously Tillman's famous kind of class at the time when it happened. I remember Maryland had lost in the first round in 2013. They got blown out by Cornell. And they were ranked preseason number 6. And everyone was like, man, that seems a little high. But the whole thing was, this class is coming in. And they lived up to the billing immediately. They got to a Final Four, and they went to 3 more, and the rest is history. Number 2 was Syracuse. Probably, if that class fully lives up to its billing, they probably have a Final Four in there, maybe more, maybe a championship. Who knows what happens with Vesco's career.
Yeah, if they don't lose to Towson in 2016, we probably think of that differently.
Yeah, 17. Their senior year, they lost to Towson. And
you beat Hopkins. 2015. That's the Final Four for them, at least.
No, 2015. Yeah, 2015 was Hopkins.
But no, you're right. 2016. You're right. 2017. That was
was against Maryland in the quarterfinal.
That wasn't a game. That was coming here for a fight.
Yeah, 15 was Hopkins, 16 was Towson, 17 was Maryland. No, 15 was Hopkins, 16 was Maryland, 17 was Towson.
That was a Titanic game too. The 2016. I remember that was kind of when we were first really starting. That was the first year of the pod, right? Was it 2016?
Yeah,
Might have been,
2016
yeah.
was our first year.
Yeah, no, I
Man,
remember.
10 years. But yeah, if that group, if they make it into 2015, even if that wasn't quite these guys' class, yeah, that changes a lot. 2017, if they could make it, that was a really beloved Syracuse team. I remember the time, all those 1-goal wins.
Chris
Looks a lot different. True. Number 3 was North Carolina. Obviously paid off. National championship. Number 4 is Virginia. Yeah, I mean, this is a class that really you can kind of look at as Desco being, or not Desco, pardon me, Sarja. These guys finished their senior year with Lars, because they missed the tournament in 16. They missed the tournament they make the tournament their first 2 years, but they lose those blowout games to Hopkins, and then missed in 2016. Hopkins was 6th. Kind of feels like a very late Petro era, like a really highly ranked class. It wasn't bad. A lot of guys did well. Not quite, like Hopkins had a couple guys in this that we didn't rank. Wilkins Dismuke, Kieran Eisler, a couple highly ranked guys that just didn't quite really produce much. Still had some really good guys. Nick Fields, John Crawley. So kind of still had. Duke, interestingly, was 5th. This is the Duke class that while they win the championship as freshmen, they don't make the Final Four the rest of their careers. And I think you can kind of see that. There's not a lot of the first Duke guy I think taken was Bruckner. So that kind of, I think, says some. Harvard 7th, that was some of these classes not panning out was kind of the end for Wojcik. Notre Dame 8th. Over the great, I mean, they made 2 Final Fours, maybe could have made more, honestly, if you look at it. Penn State was 9th. As seniors, they get Penn State to the tournament for the first time. They cross over with Grand Ment. And then 10th was Princeton, as we kind of talk about those kind of, befuddling mid-2010s Princeton years. So, yeah, it's an interesting class to look back on. A lot of teams hit gold. And some teams kind of whiff a bit, and it leads to coaching changes and a lot of disruption, which I think was part of the fun of doing this pod.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have another interesting one up around the bend, so be on the lookout for that.
That should be a lot of fun.
Another evergreen one. That one's going to be a fun one. We'll have that down the road. Otherwise, yeah, I think that'll just about wrap it up. Unless we want to rant about NFL television with the YouTube game again.
I think we're good. Let's get out of here on a high note.
I think we're good. Yeah. Well, not a high note. So thanks for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, remember you can subscribe to us if you ever want to replay it. The Cross Commission. We have all our videos up here. And when we go live, like we did tonight, you could check it out live. Thank you guys in the comments as always as well for watching and commenting. You can subscribe to the podcast too, wherever you get your favorite podcasts at the Cross Commission Podcast. And otherwise, you can follow us on Twitter at college_cross. Follow me at RyanMcD29.
When does YouTube give us a plaque for 100 subscribers? Right? Don't get one.
We could ask. Yeah,
we could. Yeah, I don't know. They're not gonna give it to us after we blasted them for having Mr. Beast on too much.
Good point.
That's not the platform's problem. That's the.
Yeah, until you find out Mr. Beast is the one that hands out the plaques nowadays. It all comes out that he's the one who actually owns YouTube or something, not Google.
Take care out there, folks.
At this rate, we're gonna have to be on Twitch after YouTube bans us for bashing them. But thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and as always, stay hydrated.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Happy birthday, Mom.